Welcome back to Double Fries No Slaw. Richie, we've talked a ton of recruiting this offseason. We started out kind of down on them, but they have been on an absolute tear recently. They got 5 prospects over the last week. They might get another one today as we record this. But let's start at the top. Devin Carter, a flip from Auburn out of Douglas County High School, 6'1", 6'1", 175-ish, lean athletic build, son of Dexter Carter. We continue to bring that up. Composite top 125 player, the number 15 prospect out of Georgia, the number 17 wide receiver overall. One of the better commits, one of the best commits in Florida State's class. They add to their wide receiver room. And man, we talked about this, but very rarely does a kid decommit from your class and then join the class again. For him to decommit from the class, commit to somebody else, and then still flip back to you. I mean, this is a great job by Mike Norvell and Tim Harris, new wide receivers coach, and really the full staff.
Yeah, it's nice to have a recruiting segment where we can be pretty positive because all the news lately has been very positive for Florida State recruiting, starting with Devin Carter. It was no surprise when he committed to Florida State, I believe, as a freshman in high school. But then obviously, decommitted, committed to Auburn, and now he's back in Florida State's class. So you hope that the drama is over with this recruitment. I think his dad probably does want him at Florida State. That's just how most dads operate. Like I played there. And I think it's a great pickup because he's a kid that could probably commit to any school in the country if he wanted to. There might be 1 or 2 schools that, they're just loaded. Maybe they got 2 5-star receivers and they may not have room for him, but he's a kid that could literally play anywhere in the country. And I think this is a great move to stay on top of the recruitment, especially with the transfer portal. We joke that, in the past, finishing second in the recruitment didn't make any difference, but now it clearly does. So you were first, then you finished second. Now you're back in first with Devin Carter. I think this is a great pickup for Florida State, and I think he really fits Gus Malzahn and the scheme he wants to run.
So they kept going there. They got tight end Xavier Tiller. This was over Auburn and Alabama. You got this commit in the same day, so you doubled up the day that Carter committed. 6'5"-ish, 220, long frame, can play inline or split out as a wide receiver. Number 204 overall player on the composite, 224 on the On3 industry rankings. Really good prospect here. In his junior year, he had 344 yards, 3 touchdowns, had a rush for 16 yards for a really good team, an 11-2 team at Langston Hughes in Georgia's 5A division. 350 yards as a sophomore, so it's 7 touchdowns there. So, a really good career so far. We'll see how his senior year goes. Plays basketball as well for his high school. Not surprising at the tight end position, just really good leaping ability, really strong, really athletic. And Florida State, shout out Chris Thompson, continues picking up blue chip tight ends. Right back to chatting with Richie, but first I do want to remind you about our friends over at Emerald Medical. If you're feeling tired, sluggish, or just off, low testosterone might be the culprit. Emerald Medical is partnering with us to give away 2 free tickets to the Alabama game. We will have info and news on that soon, so make sure you are subscribed here and following on Twitter because I'll put out all the details. But listen, if you're struggling with low energy, sluggish, whatever, reach out to Emerald Medical. EmeraldHRT.com. They will give you a free consultation if you use our code DFNS. Save you money as well. Their owner, Chris, is a huge college football fan. They will offer personalized care that you can trust. Again, emeraldhrt.com. Code is DFNS. Reach out today to schedule a free consultation and get back to feeling like the real you.
Yeah, no, I really like this one too. As you mentioned, over Auburn and Alabama, I think that's a really good pickup. And you're right in your wheelhouse where you want to be for what I would say 90% of your class. You want the kids to come from Florida or Georgia. And that's what we have here, a kid from Georgia who has produced at the high school level. And I love multi-sport athletes. Obviously, he's not going to play basketball at Florida State. But at the same time, someone like that who was able to excel in multiple sports, I think that's always a good pickup. I think of someone like, and I'm not comparing him to him and saying he's going to be him, but someone like Jimmy Graham, who never played football at Miami until I think his senior year, because he only played basketball there. you see the translation of that athleticism going from one sport to the next. And again, obviously he's a composite 4-star, which is a nice for the class rankings. But I really like to judge players based on their offer list, and having both Auburn and Alabama on there, that's a big deal in my opinion.
They moved to the secondary where they picked up Jay Timmons out of Pine Richard Lend High in Gibsonia, Pennsylvania, 5'10", 5'11", 175, 185, somewhere in there based on which service you look at. Could probably play safety or nickel. Pretty versatile there. On3 Industry has him at number 331 overall. He is a 4-star on Rivals. We'll see in a couple of days how the Rivals On3 merger or whatever they're calling that will maybe impact that. 4-star there, but a high 3-star elsewhere. Had 42 tackles, 10 pass breakups, and 4 picks, 3 forced fumbles during his junior year. And the defensive backfield, I mean, Pat Surtain continues to recruit really well there as well.
Yeah, no, I like the pickup. Obviously, I'm going to contradict myself a little bit. His offer list is not very impressive, quite frankly. Indiana, Akron, schools like that. However, if there's one recruiter on the staff I'm not going to question at all, it's going to be Pat Surtain. There are some recruiters on the staff that I do question, but if he identified him and thought he was good enough to come to Florida State and he made him a priority, you don't take a kid like this in June unless you truly want him. So that tells me enough, and I think that Pat Surtain did truly want him. I like his measurables, and I think it's a great addition to the class.
Yeah, legacy prospect as well, so makes a lot of sense with the family ties to make sure that you get him in. With a 3-3-5 system, he makes a lot of sense to come in and be part of that defensive back class as well. 2 more, and then we'll talk a little bit more. Jason Lopez, a wide receiver out of Chaminade, Madonna, down there in Miami. You went head-to-head with Miami. Georgia, Florida also involved here. 6 foot, 6'1", 170. Pretty good speed. Can stretch the field outside or as a slot. Number 252 overall on the composite. 248 on the On3 Industry. Had 33 receptions, 512 yards, 6 touchdowns. Chaminade Madonna went 12-2 and went to the state championship game in Florida's playoffs last year. Averaged over 15 yards a catch. Had 102 yards and a touchdown in a playoff win as his bigger performance. He's a sub-11 second 100-meter dash guy, also a track athlete as well. So really like the speed here. And listen, I'll just be frank. We don't go up against Miami head-to-head very often and win in recruiting here lately. Unfortunately, it was nice to get this win for sure over a big rival.
Yeah, a bit undersized, but again, when you have speed, that's something that you cannot coach, you cannot teach, and I love it. You mentioned the sub-11. That's blazing. That truly is, and he plays fast, right? So you have some guys who are track stars that try to play football, but no, he actually plays fast, and I think it's a real good pickup. And as you said, going up against Miami, clearly they are willing to overpay players. We talked about it in a recent video, how Florida State's payment system may not be the best currently, but it will improve. But when you go up against Miami for a player that is a priority for both programs and win, it's always a nice feather in the hat, especially for Mike Norvell, who had struggled up until the past week or so in recruiting.
Jacoby Green, last one we'll talk about, offensive lineman, probably on the interior from Gadsden County High School in Quincy, Florida, not too far from Florida State. You remember who was from Quincy? Dexter Jackson, Super Bowl MVP. I feel like John Gruden pulling out names just out of the middle of nowhere, but transferred in from Niceville High School, 6'2.5", 6'3", 320-ish pounds based on where you're looking. Big frame, could probably play guard or center. Not crazily high rated, number 557 overall on the composite. He's the number 50 interior offensive lineman, a top 100 kid in the state of Florida. Played right guard, saw defensive snaps as well, had 24 tackles, 9 for loss, and 3 sacks. He's pretty powerful run blocker. He's got okay feet. I think this is not like a day one guy or anything like that, but I do think that, I really do trust Herb Hand's development, depending on, how the staff does, how long he's here. I think that he could be a player that plays for you in a couple of years but you got to fill out your offensive line. And I honestly, this is not a shot or anything like that, but I do think his strength, his leverage make him a pretty good run blocker. And you need to throw numbers at this offensive line problem and see kind of what sticks. And so I've got no problem with this take at all.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. But when it comes to the trenches, you can never have enough players. 2013 was a complete anomaly for Florida State, where the entire offensive line stayed healthy the entire year. That very rarely happens. And yes, he's a developmental guy, which is fine in my opinion. I think on the offensive line, unless you get a 5-star, 6'6", 330-pound offensive tackle, you cannot expect them to contribute day one. But if you like him and you think you can develop him into something, to being a contributor or a solid starter 3 years down the line, you take it. You can never have too many offensive linemen. So I like this pickup as well.
Yeah, I think with this specifically, I've also spoken with some people on Green that think he's a little underrated. Not that he's going to come out and be a 5-star or anything crazy like that when the rankings update, but that do kind of expect him to rise in the rankings with another good year this year. So we'll see on that, right? Maybe they got in early and they did a good job of keeping a relatively hometown kid in Tallahassee. The big question I have, Richie, as we continue to talk recruiting each week, I posted a meme maybe a week or so ago, but just of every year we seem to get hyped up in the summer, and then our feelings are dashed once we get to signing day. I feel a little bit different about this class, which is up to a top 10 class right now on 247 Sports. They're doing a good job, right? Are there some places I think they could do better? Absolutely. Are there some position groups that I wish were recruiting better? Absolutely. However, I kind of expected everybody to be recruiting poorly after a 2-10 season, and wide receiver, defensive back, tight end, quarterback, running back. There's been some good things that have happened. Now, do I want more out of the linebackers, defensive line, offensive line? Absolutely. I've not, but I kind of expected everybody else to be recruiting like those positions are, to be fair. And so I'm not going to crap on the ones that are doing a really good job despite the circumstances. For some reason, and I don't know if it's just me buying the hype, for some reason, I'm not saying nobody from this class decommits. That's not my take. For some reason, I don't have as much concern around this class falling apart like it has in the past. Now, wheels come off and we go 4-8. Yes, I expect some crazy things to happen. But if Florida State wins 7, 8, 9 games, somewhere in that range, I think most of this class sticks. And how crazy will it be that Florida State could have a class that was very similar to their 13-0 class, coming off of 2 wins?
Yeah, when you talk about the concerns of decommits, there's going to be one or two. It happens every year, every cycle, every school. It just does. But I feel like a lot of these players who are committed to Florida State, they committed after watching Florida State go 2-10 last year.
Yeah.
It's not like the 13-0 season where okay, wow, man, I can go win a national title. Most of these players or their parents or their high school coaches are smart people, and they know Florida State is not going to be a national title contender in 2025. It just will not happen. However, they still committed to Florida State because clearly Norvell is selling some sort of a vision, and he might have the highest ranked recruiting class in the history since we've had these ratings of a team that won 2 games in the prior season.
Yeah, I'm going to look it up real quick. Top 247 rankings. I know this is not great for a video that I'm just stalling and doing this real quick, but I am going to look at them just very quickly, and I'm going to run down the top 10 for you, Richie. Football recruiting team rankings. Number 1, USC. That's actually a little bit surprising. They have 30 commits, so maybe not too shocking with the number of commits they have. Notre Dame in the national championship game. Georgia in the semifinal. Texas A&M. It's their bump year, right? And it's Elko's first full cycle that he gets to be a part of. So that's one that they're number 4. Ohio State, national champions. Miami, we know what kind of money they spend. Also coming off of a 10-win season. Clemson, playoff team. Penn State, semifinal team. Alabama, first team out of the playoff. Kind of got gypped because Clemson won the ACC championship and made it in. Otherwise, Alabama makes it. Right after that, you've got Michigan, who won the national championship the year before, and Texas, number 12, who was in the semifinal as well. Not every single team ahead of you was in the playoffs. The ones that weren't, you kind of understand why they're as high as they are. Florida
company to
State,
be in.
yeah, nobody had 2 wins, right? Even Lincoln Riley and them that went 7-5 or 8-4 or whatever, they weren't a 2-win team. So the fact that Florida State's even in that kind of conversation, not just conversation, they're there right now, is pretty good. And you look at the teams like, okay, who's going to pass Florida State, right? Unless the bottom falls out, who may pass FSU? Well, it wouldn't shock me if Alabama passed them. Texas is right behind them. Wouldn't shock me if Texas finished with a top 10 class as well. Florida's behind them. We'll see how their season goes. That's one that I think that they theoretically could as well. SMU, I don't think will. Illinois, I don't think will. UCLA, I don't think will. LSU could. LSU's 17 right now. They pass you. They're in for a lot of really great talent. Minnesota won't. Cal won't. North Carolina won't. Rutgers won't. Arkansas won't. Washington won't. Pittsburgh won't. Kansas, Michigan State, Mississippi State, Syracuse, Boston College. Oregon is 30th right now. They could make a pretty late run and pass you. But you're talking like 4 or 5 teams could pass you, right? There aren't, behind that, it's BYU, West Virginia, Stanford, Purdue, Georgia Tech, Iowa, Baylor, USF, Oklahoma, I don't think will. App State, TCU, Wisconsin, Vandy, Wake, Northwestern. Like there are, and then you get down in the 60s, right? So I mean, if the bottom doesn't fall out, I think you're looking at kind of worst case. Now, worst case is the bottom falls out and you get a new coach. But worst case, I think you're looking at about a top 15 class. Worst case, right? Best case, you might be flirting with top 10.
Yeah, I'd say worst case, assuming you have a solid year on the field. So even if you go 6-6, I think worst case would be like 12 or 13. Just where they stand right now and where others are at. But yeah, even if you sign a top 15 class, saying you went 2-10, and then we'll call it 7-5, and you still sign a top 15 class, that's solid work right there. That really is
trending the right way, right? And I really think you need to be up close to 10 at Florida State.
Yes.
But I think that is trending the right way. And that's the worst case, right? There's a best case where they win 9 games and flip a couple of guys late and finish inside the top 10, right? Yeah. We're talking kind of a worst case. There is a best case scenario too. Yeah. It's probably somewhere in the middle. They're probably around 13 or 14, it's probably somewhere in the middle of 12, 13, 14. But I think for your worst case to be around 15 is not a terrible spot to be in. We'll see how they continue to do. Make sure you are subscribed. Again, Double Fries, No Slaw. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We'll talk to you soon. Go Noles.